At least 8 people have been in a Russian attack on a shopping center in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv, according to local authorities. As a consequence of the enemy missile strike and the resulting fire, a shopping mall was destroyed, windows in the nearby residential buildings, and the vehicles parked in the vicinity were damaged, the Prosecutor General said in a post in its Telegram channel. The Prosecutor General suggested the number of fatalities could rise, adding that the number of them was based on preliminary information. A Kyiv firefighter at the destroyed shopping center after the Russian attack. The attack also ruined nearby buildings and left burnt debris strewn across several hundred meters. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Major-General Igor Konashenkov said had been targeted because it was used to store rockets, claims that couldn't be independently verified. Russian troops are now trying to surround the Ukrainian capital, which had nearly 3 million people before the war. Russian troops are fighting Ukrainian forces north of Kyiv, but the latest UK Ministry of Defense Intelligence said that most of the Russian force remained 25 kilometers from the city center. In the Ukrainian city of Kherson, Russian troops used live bullets and stun grenades to break up a peaceful protest by local residents. Footage from scene shows hundreds of protesters approaching a city square before being forced to flee after gunfire breaks out. The demonstrators were in Kherson's Freedom Square at the time of the incident, reports. Russian security forces ran up, started throwing stun grenades into the crowd, and the Ukrainian Armed Forces Press Service said in a statement. Russia has not commented on the incident. There are reports several people were injured. The Russian military claimed the shopping mall they destroyed was storing Ukrainian rockets. EU slams war crimes in Ukraine. European Union countries have accused the Russian armed forces of committing war crimes in Ukraine. But they appeared unlikely to impose new sanctions on Moscow despite a clamor across Europe for those responsible for attacks on civilians to be held to account. With civilians mounting in the besieged port city of Mariupol, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerb highlighted the increase in Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure, including hospitals and theaters. Ukraine rejects Russian demand for surrender of Mariupol. Ukrainian firefighters extinguish a blaze at a warehouse after in Kyiv, Ukraine, Thursday, March 17, 2022. Russian forces destroyed a theater in Mariupol where hundreds of people were sheltering Wednesday and rained fire on other cities, Ukrainian authorities said, even as the two sides projected optimism over efforts to negotiate an end to the fighting. Courts will have to decide, but for me these are clearly war crimes, Ms. Baerb said. Speaking before he chaired a meeting of the 27-nation bloc's foreign ministers in Brussels, EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said what's happening in Mariupol is a massive war crime. Destroying everything, arding and everybody in an indiscriminate manner, he said. This is something awful. European Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell, left, speaks with Foreign Minister of Portugal Augusto Santos Silva. The encircled southern city on the Sea of Azov has seen some of the worst horrors of the war. Multiple attempts to evacuate residents from Mariupol have failed or only partly succeeded. City officials said at least 2,300 people have in the siege, with some buried in mass graves. Mr. Borrell underlined that war also has law. The International Criminal Court in the Netherlands is gathering evidence about any possible war crimes in Ukraine, but Russia, like the United States, doesn't recognize the tribunal's jurisdiction. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney said his country is certainly open to other mechanisms for accountability in terms of the atrocities that are taking place in Ukraine right now. In this satellite photo from Planet Labs PBC, multiple civilian buildings burn amid Russian strikes on the Livoberezhny district of Mariupol. Mr. Coveney said Russia's invasion of Ukraine is probably the first war being played out on social media, where people see images happening live, and they are outraged by it. This is driving a fury across the European Union within the public as to why can't we stop this, he told reporters. They want people held to account for the decisions taken and the brutality that we have seen. The imposition of a new round of sanctions, asset freezes and travel bans appears unlikely for now. Notorious for their often slow handling of fast-moving international events, EU nations have rallied in just over 3 weeks since the invasion began on February 24 to slap sanctions on 877 people. They include Russian President Vladimir Putin, senior ministers and pro-Kremlin oligarchs. A further 62 entities, companies, banks, airlines and shipbuilders have also been hit in near-record time. But the issue of imposing restrictive measures on energy remains extremely sensitive, given the dependence of many EU countries on supplies of Russian natural gas. A group of countries led by Germany wants a pause on new measures for now, amid concern about high energy prices and fears that Russia might halt gas exports to Europe. Some also want to save sanction ammunition for any new and major war atrocity, like the use of chemical weapons. We are doing everything to close loopholes in the sanctions that have already been agreed, Ms. Baerbock said. But Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis, whose country borders Russia and Belarus, warned against sanctions fatigue. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis speaks with the press prior to a meeting of the EU foreign ministers. We cannot get tired imposing sanctions. We cannot get tired offering assistance and help to Ukraine, he said. He said the EU must start thinking about what kind of attack by Russia would constitute a red line for tougher measures. The shelling of cities and civilians, he said, doesn't appear to be enough to persuade some member countries, but somewhere there has to be one. Ukrainians survey damaged school as Russian assault continues. Mr. Landsbergis also said Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia need their defenses bolstered by partner countries.